This, of course, was an actual unprovoked attack, an illegal attack as well. But the capture or arrest, as the media sometimes refer to it, as the president of Venezuela has been also quite dramatic. How are you assessing the situation, and what are the objectives of the United States here?
Well, clearly this is a blatantly illegal act, but it's one in a long line of blatantly illegal American actions. And just in the recent days, Trump has been threatening a new country every day. He bombed Nigeria last week. He said that the U.S. would intervene in Iran if the government acts against the protesters in a way that Trump doesn't like. He has invaded Venezuela. Just recently, he created a special envoy for Greenland, declaring that Greenland will be ours. So it's a threat against Europe, which of course Europe doesn't even acknowledge or recognize because it's so passive relative to the United States. We are not in a constitutional order in the United States. We are in an order led by a military state. We do not obey the U.S. Constitution. Everything is by executive decree. When a congressman dared to mention the U.S. Constitution today, Trump said, "What is he whining about? This is ridiculous." Well, this is really, at least what Trump has done is expose the fact that we're at the end of constitutional rule in the United States. What happens when there's a thuggish rule remains to be seen, but in my view, this makes the world extraordinarily dangerous. Of course, we're hardly at the end of the story about Venezuela itself. They have arrested a president, but this is not the end of anything. The whole history of U.S. regime change operations, which number probably around 100 such operations since the end of World War II, is a record of bloodshed, violence, deliberate creation of instability, coups, assassinations, civil war. So we don't know what will come next, but we know that there's been thuggery. It's also interesting, though it's maybe I don't have a definitive count of it, but I've not noticed any of the mainstream media in the United States even raising a question about this. The New York Times, the so-called paper of record, did not one time in recent weeks say, "Oh, it wouldn't be a good idea to brazenly attack that country." The editorial board was completely silent. As far as I can see, it remains silent. Our Congress is moribund. It doesn't exist, in fact, in any operational sense. So I find all of this very dramatic and extremely worrisome, though I hasten to repeat, we're not at the end of the story by any means of what will transpire in Venezuela itself. There is a government in place, there is a military, there is a mobilized part of society, there's lots of guns around. This is not a simple, smooth takeover by the United States as much as Donald Trump might believe so.
Yeah, that long list of only the threats being made over the past few weeks is quite extraordinary. And we see Trump getting increasingly unhinged, not just at our domestic, but also at the international level. But the Europeans, though, have, the leaders, I mean, of Europe, have predictably showed their obedience and offered their support, making it clear they consider Maduro illegitimate and seeking well, essentially to back the American position on this. But what does this mean for Latin America? Because in the U.S. national security strategy, it outlined clearly that this was, well, more or less America's backyard now, and it wanted other great powers out, and the U.S. should, well, reign supreme. Is this something, a warning for what's to come in other places in Latin America as well?
Well, first, let me say a word about Europe. It's a very sad day for your country, Glenn. I think we can rename the Nobel Peace Prize as the Nobel War Prize. It was given to a person this year who called for exactly what has happened today, who called for a military strike by the United States on Venezuela. It came to pass. This is a tragedy for countries, governments, and institutions that once upon a time talked about international law. The European response has been pathetic, absolutely pathetic. Of course, every leader in Europe seems to cower to the U.S., to be terrified. The strongest statements were, we hope that this will return to stability soon, not any kind of shock of a brazen attack against the international order, against the UN Charter, against peace itself. So this is the world that we're in right now. Europe varies between complete vassalage and acquiescence to the U.S. or its own war mongering when it comes to Russia. There seems to be no diplomacy, no peace, and no attachment to multilateralism or to the UN Charter. You don't see it anywhere. When it comes to Latin America, of course, Trump has been openly saying that the United States rules the Western Hemisphere. It will dictate the terms. He has said today, basically, I don't have the direct quotation because I'm halfway around the world, but I saw the Wire notice that Trump said, well, the oil is ours. This is a grab for Venezuelan oil. He said our companies will go back in and do business in Venezuela. It could not be crasser or cruder. And we've been there before in this kind of world. We have had a world of sheer imperialism that it was not in any way tempered or bound by international law, and it led to 2 world wars and unconscionable, unimaginable loss of life. So we've been in this kind of situation before. We've never been in this kind of lawlessness in the nuclear age, however, and I think that this is just extraordinarily worrisome to have an unhinged, undisciplined, crude bully, absolutely lawless, absolutely disrespectful of any norms as President of the United States, and to have no counterweight whatsoever in Europe, not a voice for decency or international law. And for the rest of the world, well, I suppose that Russia and China are watching. They have said this is obviously a crass violation. They're not going to intervene in the Western Hemisphere. But what has happened is simply another step of completely dismantling of the institutions and lessons that we once thought we had learned from World War I and World War II and had installed, however fragilely, in the United Nations system and in international law. It barely exists. The UN is in the same situation today as the League of Nations was in its defunct period in the late 1930s and early 1940s. It essentially is useless right now. And I'm sorry to say it because I've been working for and with the UN for 25 years, but the U.S. has disowned it, is trying deliberately to destroy it. And while one hoped that the rest of the world would rally to its defense, we see that Europe is silent. And our lights went out. I'm in the Himalayas right now, so. But I don't see what is needed right now, which is the rest of the world rallying to the cause that this can't stand in this way. Maybe in the first hours, one shouldn't expect this, and maybe more will come. But it's a very, very alarming period. The U.S. is deliberately out to rip up any semblance or shred of international law. I don't know how Europe will feel when the United States invades Greenland, but don't be surprised when it happens. Trump has announced it. He has announced it again and again, and it's very, very likely to happen. One day, Trump will say we have a national emergency, and Greenland will be occupied. And then probably Europe will say, oh, thank you, U.S. It could have been worse. This is how things are right now. Principles, who needs them?